Have you ever paused in the middle of your day and wondered why you feel stuck? Even when the world tells you you're full of potential, you've probably been praised for your creativity, your bright future, your limitless possibilities. But somehow, none of it feels real anymore. That fire inside you, it flickers, it doesn't burn. You dream big, but when it's time to move, you freeze. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because there's a hidden archetype living inside you. One Carl Jung called Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. This archetype is seductive. It makes you believe that staying young, forever curious, forever exploring, is the highest virtue. It whispers, why settle down? Why commit? Why choose when you can keep all your options open? At first glance, it sounds noble, like freedom, like power, like possibility. But beneath the charm lies the real cost. Because the eternal child doesn't want to grow. It fears structure. It avoids responsibility. It runs from discomfort. It wants passion without discipline. It wants love without effort. It wants purpose without pressure. And in a society addicted to dopamine, distraction, and youth, this archetype is not just accepted, it's rewarded. Think about it. We glorify doing what feels good. We avoid boredom like it's a disease. We call quitting self-care. We call hesitation intuition. We wrap fear in the language of empowerment and convince ourselves that waiting is wisdom. But here's the brutal truth Jung saw. The Puer Aeternus keeps you dreaming, so you never have to do. And slowly, you become trapped in a life you didn't choose, but didn't resist either. You scroll, you fantasize, you plan, but you never build. And no matter how much you imagine a better life, your feet stay glued to the same ground. This is the cost of ungrounded potential. It's a life of starts without finishes, a journey with no destination, a voice that sings but never speaks truth. So ask yourself, what part of you still wants to stay unformed, uncommitted, undefined? What part of you still believes that avoiding responsibility is the same as choosing freedom? Because that belief may be the single thing holding you back from everything real. Now that we've named the archetype, we can begin the real work. Integration. Not destroying your inner child, but guiding it, rooting its wildness in something solid, turning potential into power. And that begins with the next step, which we'll dive into right now. You've seen him before, the man who refuses to settle, who speaks of freedom like it's salvation. He jumps from job to job, from city to city, from dream to dream, always starting, never finishing. And to the outside world, he looks exciting, spontaneous, even enlightened. But look closer, and you'll see something else. Restlessness, exhaustion, a quiet, gnawing emptiness that he can't explain. Because deep down, he's not free, he's floating. Carl Jung called this pattern the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. A man stuck in perpetual adolescence, drawn to novelty, terrified of roots. He confuses freedom with escape, and dreams with direction. Here's the paradox. When you reject all structure, you don't become free. You become lost. Because true freedom isn't the absence of boundaries. It's the ability to choose your constraints and commit to them. Let's talk about Icarus, the boy who strapped on wings of wax and flew toward the sun, driven by wonder, drunk on potential, but lacking discipline. He soared too high, too fast, too close, and he fell, not because he dreamed, but because he refused limits. And that's the tragedy of the child man. He wants the fire without learning how to carry it. Today's world doesn't help. We live in a culture that glorifies youth. That tells you, stay wild, don't grow up. Then, freedom means never being tied down. But freedom without purpose is just drift. And drift always leads to disintegration. Ask yourself honestly, are you chasing freedom? Or are you running from accountability? Are you staying open? Or are you just afraid to choose something and become someone? Because here's the hard truth. You cannot feel fulfilled in a life you refuse to finish building. Structure is not the enemy. It's the scaffolding for real growth. It turns random energy into focused creation. It's what turns potential into power. So maybe it's time to redefine what freedom actually means. Not the right to escape, but the courage to engage, to stay when it's easier to leave, to finish what you started, to hold the line even when you'd rather disappear. That's not weakness, that's strength. And that's the kind of man who builds something that lasts. In the next part, we'll explore how this fear of structure becomes even deeper, how it doesn't just shape your behavior, but starts to define who you think you are. Let's keep going. We hear it everywhere now. Be yourself. Stay true to who you are. Live your truth. It sounds empowering. It feels rebellious. It's become a cultural anthem of self-liberation. But what if I told you that in some cases it's not authenticity, it's avoidance, not growth, but disguise? Carl Jung warned us about this. He spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, suppress, or deny. And for the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child, the shadow isn't darkness in the traditional sense. It's something more subtle, more seductive: responsibility, structure, discipline, limits, failure, commitment. These aren't evils. They're the very things required for adulthood. But to the child man, they feel like prisons. So what does he do? He wraps avoidance in a new language. He calls it freedom. He calls it authenticity. He says, that's just not me. But look deeper, and you'll find a man paralyzed by the fear of becoming. A man so afraid of being boxed in that he never steps into anything real. He says he doesn't want to conform, but what he really fears is being defined. Because to define yourself means choosing, and to choose means closing the door on 1,000 other lives you could have lived. That's the pain. That's the hidden wound of the puer. He wants infinite possibilities, but real life, meaningful life, demands limitation. Here's the irony. The more you try to stay open, the less you actually build, and what's left is an identity made of vapor, floating, shifting, never rooted. You're not living free. You're just escaping the work of integration. Jung was clear. You cannot become whole until you face your shadow. And for the eternal child, the shadow is adulthood itself. It's the part of life that asks for sacrifice. That requires you to pick up responsibility, to finish what you start, to become someone who can be counted on. But here's the twist. True authenticity doesn't come from rejecting these things. It comes from choosing them on your own terms. Not because the world says so, but because you've decided, this is who I will become. That's not conformity, that's authorship. So ask yourself, is your resistance really about being true to yourself? Or are you just afraid to grow? The answer might be the mirror you've been avoiding. There's a child in you, still, right now. You may not hear them often, but they're there. The part of you that dreams wildly, that imagines without limits, that wants to feel everything and do everything all at once. This inner child holds the raw energy of life, uninhibited, curious, creative, restless, and yes, rebellious. But here's the catch. Raw energy without direction becomes chaos. Carl Jung warned us about this. He saw the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child, not as a flaw, but as a powerful archetype within the human psyche. One that can either destroy you or transform you. And the difference, whether or not you grow into the adult who can guide it. This isn't about suppressing your inner child. It's not about growing up. in the way society tries to force you into boxes and beige responsibilities. It's about integration, bringing the child and the adult into harmony. Think about it. The child says, "Let's create something bold, let's fly." But the adult replies, "Then let's build wings that won't fall apart in the sky." The child has vision. The adult builds systems. The child wants to feel alive. The adult wants it to be sustainable. Look at the most remarkable people throughout history. The greatest artists, the most visionary entrepreneurs, the leaders who changed the game. They didn't lose their inner child. They mastered it. Steve Jobs still dreamed like a kid, but built like an architect. Leonardo da Vinci kept wonder alive, but paired it with relentless study, iteration, and patience. They honored both parts. They did the work while keeping the spark. So here's the challenge. Are you only feeding your dreams? Or are you building a container for them? Because without structure, your passion will eventually burn you out. And without discipline, your creativity will stay trapped in a notebook, never becoming real. This is the true meaning of Jung's individuation. To bring the wild and the wise together. To allow your soul to remain free, but grounded. To dream and deliver. But let's be honest, this is hard work. Integration means confronting your resistance. It means saying no to distraction. It means committing to things that scare you, because deep down, you know they matter. It's no longer enough to just feel potential. You have to embody it. That means showing up, even when you're tired, even when it's not exciting anymore, even when your inner child throws a tantrum because it's not fun anymore. That's what the adult is for, to stay, to build, to carry the dream forward, even when the dreamer wants to quit. So I'll ask you, when your inner child whispers, "Let's fly," will your adult self know how to lift them? Because if not, you'll stay on the ground, forever waiting for the wind to carry you. But you can become the wind. This is the path to wholeness. Not choosing the child or the adult, but becoming the one who holds them both. That's not just growth. That's mastery. That is individuation. They told you to grow up, to let go of your dreams, to abandon wonder for something they called reality. But Jung never said to kill the child within you. He said, guide them, because the world doesn't need more adults who've buried their joy, who've lost their spark, who only know how to follow rules, but have forgotten how to imagine. No, the world needs those who can stand firmly on the ground, while still reaching for the stars. That's what real maturity looks like. It's not becoming cold, or boring, or bitter. It's becoming anchored enough to carry your own fire, to build the dreams your younger self once whispered in the dark. You see, escapism is easy. It's everywhere. Entertainment, distraction, pleasure on demand. But integration? That's where the strength is. Escapism says, run from your pain. Avoid hard things. Stay soft, stay safe, stay small. Press. But integration whispers, bring your pain with you and build anyway. This is the shift we must make, from being ruled by the eternal child to becoming the guardian of it. And here's the most powerful truth. Freedom and responsibility are not enemies. They are the two sides of one whole life. Real freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's knowing what you must do and having the strength to choose it. So here's what you must ask yourself now. Are you living in the fantasy of freedom or in the practice of it? Because the fantasy feels good in the moment, but the practice changes everything. It shapes your identity. It builds your legacy. It gives your life weight. This journey isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, not flawless, but fully awake, fully alive, fully responsible for the path you choose to walk. Because the child in you, they still dream, they still believe, they still carry the light, but only the adult in you can carry it through the dark. So what now? You don't need a 10-year plan. You don't need to know all the answers. You only need to decide that you will no longer run from yourself. Say it quietly for you. I choose to guide my inner child, not for attention, not for approval, but because deep down, you know this is your moment. This is the first real step toward integration, toward wholeness, toward the life your soul was meant to live. You've dreamed long enough. Now, you build.